This is Numeracy Practice Test 3. We're just going through the solutions. So which solid is not a prism? Now we recognize this as a pyramid. It's a pointy, like the pyramids of Egypt. So this one is a pyramid. So that is definitely not a prism. But what is a prism? A prism is a solid with a uniform cross-section. So a prism has a uniform cross-section. It means that when you cut it, you get the same shape and size over and over and over again. So for example, if I cut downwards here, I would get, see this triangle? It's the same shape there and at the back. Do you see that? And if I did, I could draw triangles through the middle as well if I just kept cutting through. This shape here that I'm shading is the same shape at the front and the back, that backward L shape. See how that shape goes all the way through the solid? It's the same shape. And here, look, any of these are uniform cross section. Like the front, I could keep cutting. It's the same shape as the back and size. And I could keep cutting down slices and I would get the same shape and size every time. So a prism has a uniform cross section. So the one that's not a prism is the first one, the pyramid. Okay? So if you see, if that looks like the pyramids of Egypt, upside down, that's the pyramid. Now the next one, just be very careful here. It says Hassan bought a packet of 60 mints to divide equally among his 4 friends and himself. So how many people are sharing? 5. So he wants to divide them equally amongst his 4 friends and himself. So 4 friends plus himself, it's actually 5 people. So which ones are not? So it says the packet costs $3.20. Which expression shows how to calculate how much in cents each person had to pay? So it's, girls, so which one do I do? That's right. So it's $3.20 because you have to calculate how much in cents. So it's 320 cents divided by 5. So it's the last one. Okay? Now the next one. So be careful. A lot of people are just going to think 60 divided by 5, 60 divided by 4, 320 divided by 4, because you've got to read it very carefully. 4 friends and himself is 5 people. So you really need to read these carefully. Now question 3, Sarah's telephone bill. This is a bit of a tricky one. So her for the period ending 15th of September, it was $125.30, and the following additional information was included in her account. And they sometimes do this with water bills as well. They'll say this time last year you used this much water, or you paid this much. So this is for her bill now, and her local calls went down by $17.50. That means the last bill was more expensive. Does this make sense? So the last bill, they want the total of Sarah's previous bill. So we're going to have to add $17.50, right? So if in this bill the calls were down by $17.50, the last bill the calls were higher by $17.50. If in this bill the calls went up by $10.30 for STD, last bill the calls were lower, down, $10.30. If in this bill the calls to mobiles were up by 75 cents, last bill the calls were down by 75 cents. And if this bill the calls were down by $5.40, last bill the calls were up by $5.40. So what you've got to do, this is what this bill is. So you have to add $17.50, subtract $10.30, take away 75 cents and add $5.40. So you have to start with the $125.30, what this bill is. Last bill, the local calls were more expensive by $17.50 because this bill, they were down. So $125.30 plus $17.50 minus $10.30 minus 75 cents and plus $5.40. Number, you add $17.50, subtract $10.30, subtract 75 cents and add $5.40, end up with $137.15. Okay, Billy bought a car. She actually has estimated the cost of running the car as shown in the table. So the insurance is $1,200 a year, registration $1,200 a year, servicing and parts $300 4 times a year, and petrol is $50 a week. They said to estimate how much per month on average. Estimate. We don't want an exact answer. Now, if you're paying $1,200 a year, to get for the cost for 1 month, it's $1,200 divided by 12, which is $100. Same with the registration. It's exactly the same. $1,200 divided by 12, $100. Now, the servicing and parts for the year, it's $300, and you're paying that four times a year. So it's 300 times 4, which is $1,200 for the year. But for the month, it's just the same as the others, you know. If it's $1,200 for a year, it's $100 for a month. Now, it does say to estimate it. We know, do you remember the magic number? There's more than 4 weeks in a year. It's 4 point something. Anyone know what the number is? It's about 4 1/3, but they're just saying to estimate. If you have to work out the exact amount, you've got to change it to years. And then, so to do it the exact amount, it's $50 a week times 52. That's how much per year, right? And then you'd get that answer for 1 year, and then you'd divide it by 12. All right? So 50 times 52, I think that's 2,600. And then so that's for a year, and then you divide it by 12 to get the monthly. So what you had? And you get about 500, no, what do you get? 216. About $216 approximately. But it says estimate how much per month. Now, you've got 100 plus 100 plus 100 plus, you've got 216. But, so that gives you 516, which is about 500. Now, they didn't actually want you to work out the exact amount. What they really wanted you to do for this one is there's about, 1 month is a bit more than 4 weeks. So we just estimate for 1 month is about, this is not exact, it's approximately 50 times 4, which is about 200. All right, so you do 100 plus 100 plus 100 plus 200. Whereas that 216, I think it's 67 as well, is the exact amount. But if they say estimate, you don't have to work it out exactly. All right, so you would just do, so for the estimate, it would be 100, 100, 100, and 200, which is 500. Okay? Now, question 5. A tub of yogurt claims to provide 20% of a person's daily calcium requirements, and the tub contains 200 milligrams of calcium. So that's 20% of your daily requirements. Tell me about, when you see 20%, what do you think? If you want to know about the whole day, what percentage should I be working out? The whole amount. Girls, if 20% of your daily calcium requirements is in a tub of yogurt and the yogurt's got 200 milligrams of calcium, then 20% of your daily calcium requirements is 200 milligrams. Equals 200 milligrams. It says the yogurt, the tub has got 20% of your daily calcium requirements, and the tub has got 200 milligrams of calcium. So that's 20% of what you need every day. How many, when we say what do you need for the whole day, we want to know 100%. Always the whole amount is 100%. So what do you think I do? If 20% of your daily requirements is 200 milligrams, how do I work out what 100% of your daily requirements are? You times it by 5. So 20 and another 20 and another 20, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. If I times that by 5, I would get, if I do that 5 times, I would end up with everything I need, 100%. So I times this by 5. So 20% of what I need is 200 milligrams. So another 20% would be another 200 milligrams, and another 20% would be another 200 milligrams. So it's 20 times 200 times 5, which is 1,000 milligrams that you need. See, what fraction is 20%, by the way? What fraction is 20%, girls? 20, no. 20%. Look, I can draw it in a circle or I could draw it on a grid. If this 20%, if the whole amount's 100%, is 1/5. Okay, 20% is 1/5. So I'd need 5 of those 1/5 to make one whole. Okay? All right, now, question 6. Last year, Joe spent $16,000 in the ratio of 5 to 2 to 3 on rent, clothes, and furniture. How much did she spend on rent? Do you remember my method with the table? You put your headings first. We go rent, clothes, furniture. So you put your headings at the top row. And underneath it, you put your ratios. So what's the ratio? Last year, Joe spent $16,000. The $16,000 is not the ratio, it's the money that she spent. She spent $16,000 in the ratio of 5 is to 2 is to 3 on rent, clothes, and furniture respectively, meaning that the order is the same as that. So what's my ratio for rent? 5, 2, 3. Now, you always put a total column. What do they add up to? 10. Good. So my ratios add up to 10. Now, then I put quantity on my next row. So I always put my headings, then my ratio, then my quantity. Now it says, how much did she spend on rent? So what does this 10 represent? Where would I put this $16,000? Underneath one of those or for the total? Good. So if, sorry, that's 160,000. Oh no, it is 16,000. So 16,000 on rent. Now 16,000 is 10 ratio parts. What do you think 5 ratio parts is? No. If 10 ratios, like if 10 parts is 16,000, what's 5? Isn't 5 half of 10? What would you? All right. So girls, what we've got to do, we've got to say 10 times what is 16?
560.
Got 5 and 2 parts and 3 parts, and that adds up to 10 parts, and 5 of those parts is the rent. Isn't the rent half of what you're spending everything on?
1,600.
Yeah, so aren't you spending rent, look, 16,000 is spent on everything. Look, you know what I might do? I'm going to draw I'm going to draw a little graph. And that's everything I spend, right? And 5 parts is on rent. Let's say this is 10 long. Do you know why it's 10 long? Because all of the parts add up to 10. So if this is 10 units long, 5 parts is rent. Got it? Another 2 parts, let's say 2 centimeters is clothes, and the rest is furniture. Now, if the whole graph, that's all the money you spent, is $16,000 is everything. Isn't rent half the graph? If the whole thing is 10 units long, isn't the rent half of it, 5 units? Mm-hmm. So if everything in the whole graph is $16,000, how much did you spend on rent? Rent is half the graph. 5 plus 2 plus 3 is 10. And rent is 5.
8,000.
Is 5 parts out of the 10. It's half the graph. So half of 16,000 is 8,000.
Instead of doing the graph, you know how I told you that?
Yes.
Do 16,000 divided by 10.
That's right.
And then do the same.
Yes. So the other way to do it is if it wasn't exactly half like this, you would say 16,000 divided by 10, that's 1,600. So 10 times 1,600 is 16,000, and you've got to do 5 times 1,600. But I think in this case, it's easier for you to see that the rent is half of the total. See, the total ratio is 10, and rent is 5 parts of that ratio. So it's half of it. Half the money goes on rent. This one's a bit tricky. It says the amount of water it takes to produce 1 kilo of each food. So the question is, How much water is needed to produce the beef for this hamburger? Now, amount of water it takes to produce 1 kilo of each food. A hamburger uses 100 grams of beef. Now, this is how much water it takes to produce 1 kilo of beef. How much water? So the water needed to make or produce 1 kilo of beef is what? Read it off the graph. 100,000 litres. Can you see that? But girls, a hamburger only needs 100 grams of beef. That's for a kilo. So this is for a kilo. 100 grams. What's a kilo in grams? 1 kilo is how many grams? Is 1,000 grams. So if you want to make 1,000 grams of beef, you need 100,000 litres of water. If you just want to, a hamburger, you only need 100 grams of beef. So 100 grams of beef, is it going to need more or less than that much water? Less. How much less? What are you going to do? How many zeros are you going to drop off? 1. Because this is for a kilo or 1,000 grams. That's how much water you need to make a kilo of beef or 1,000 grams of beef. You are now making just 100, so it's 1 less zero than that. So it'll use 10,000 litres. Okay? Because it's 10 of these burgers makes 1 kilo. Like 100 times 10 is 1,000. All right? Now, question 8. Have you tried that yet? Volume. Do you know how to work out volume of a rectangular prism? Length times base times height. So you just multiply the 3 values together. Now, it doesn't want you to work it out exactly. You don't have a calculator. So tell me what the height is roughly equal to. Roughly. 2. And the breadth, roughly?
2.
And the length, roughly?
3.
And what's good about this, see the height, you made it a bit bigger, you made the breadth a bit bigger, and you made the length a bit smaller. So they sort of even each other out. So length times breadth times height will be 3 times 2 times 2. And what's that?
12.
3 times 2, 6 times 2, 12. So it's closest to 12 meters cubed. So you really need to read it very carefully. It's closest to. They don't want you to sit there and do 1.8 times 1.9. You can approximate. Remember, this is numeracy. An excess, if you've heard about insurance, we all pay money to get our houses insured and our cars insured. But if something happens to your house or car and you need the company to pay for the damage, they charge you an excess. So you have to pay more money. So an excess is the contribution that a driver is required to pay towards a claim made on a car insurance policy. And this is the Ostrich Insurance Company, and these are their excess conditions. Basic excess is $300. So if someone like me has an accident and wants to claim, I pay $300. But let's say I've got a daughter or a son and they are under the age of 25. They've got to pay more excess, okay? Additional excess. So if I have a child and they're driving my car and they have an accident, if I have a son, we've got to pay the $300 and the extra $1,000. And if I have a daughter, I have to pay the $300 excess and the extra $500, okay? Now, it says Anne is 22 years old. Is she a boy or a girl? It's a female. Is she less than 25? Yes. Okay, so Anne is 22 years old. She's had an accident. She's insured with the Ostrich Insurance Company. The cost of the repair is $4,000. Now, she doesn't pay for the repair. The insurance company pays the $4,000, but she just has to pay the excess. That's why you get insured. All right. Let's say something happens to a car and it's $10,000 of damage. You've only got to pay the excess because you're paying maybe $1,000 a year for the last 20 years and you haven't claimed anything because you never had an accident. So that when you do have one, they'll only charge you the excess. All right. So she doesn't have to pay for all the $4,000. But what does Anne have to pay? The 300 plus the 500. So all she's got to do is pay the 800. Okay. She doesn't have to pay the $4,000 that it costs. That your insurance company pays for that. Okay. All right. So you only pay the excess, not the cost of the repair. The next one, question 10. Here we've got a sailboard and they want the area of the triangle. Now you can work out area of triangles a few ways. Like this. Remember, they've always got to be at right angles to each other. What's the formula for the area of a triangle? Isn't it half times the base times the height? Now, your triangle can look like that, or it can look like this. That's your height, and your base is all of this. Now, which type of triangle do you think I've got here? The first one or the second one?
Second.
Yeah, I do. There's your base. If I turn it over, look. That's my base. That's my height. Got it? All right. What is the area? They don't give you a calculator. So the area is half the base times the height. What's the base? 4.6. And what's the height? 2.2. Now, can you work it? Do you know what half of 4.6 is? What's half of 46? 23. So that would be 2.3 times 2.2. Now, look, you're going to have to work it out. 2.3 times 2.2. Do you remember how to do this? 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 2 is 4. Don't worry about any points yet. Put a 0. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 2 is 4. Then we add them up. 6, 10, 5. So what, and I've got 2 decimal places after the point. Well, which of those answers? 5.06. Okay, meters squared. 11. P, O, and Q lie on a straight line and OS bisects the angle ROT. So that's indicated by the equal dots. Bisect means to cut in half. So you have to know which one the angle ROT is. So we've got ROT. So that's what the equal dots are, that they are equal in size, those two angles. It says how many degrees are there in angle SOQ? So they want to know about this angle, SOQ. SOQ. Want to know about this one. So what we're going to have to do is work out what the dot is. Now we know that there is 180 degrees in a straight line. So we've got 180 all the way around there. So we already know 40 and 30, so I can do 180 minus 40 minus 30, that's 110. And because OS bisects this angle, these two are equal. Well, the two of them together add up to 110, so I can do 110 divided by 2, that's 55. So each of these is 55. So 55 and 55, that's 110. Plus 40, that's 150, and 30, 180. But I need to know the size of angle SOQ. So SOQ is what I'm marking out here. It's that. SOQ. It's the 55 plus the 30, which is 85 degrees. Okay, now for question 12. It asks for the area of the shaded region. Now, we know that this length across here is 12. So we need to see how big or how long the length of each square. Now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares. So I go 12 divided by 6 is 2. So each of these is 2 centimeters, and 2 and 2, 2, 2, 2. That makes sense. Now, if this is 6 centimeters all here, and that's being divided into 3 squares, 6 divided by 3 squares is 2. So these lengths are also 2. So therefore, the shaded area, well, if that's 2 and that's 2, this whole length here is 4. And this one is 2, 4, 6. So here's my shaded area. It's 6 times 4, which is 24 centimeters squared. So it's the last option here. Okay, question 13. A carpenter is fitting a bookshelf along the wall, and the wall is 3.8 meters long, and the bookshelf is 1.48 meters long. So I'm going to draw my wall. And the wall is 3.8 meters long, and I want to put my bookshelf in the middle. It's like this. And my bookshelf is 1.48 meters long. And here's my wall, and I want this bookshelf centered. So this distance here has to be equal to this distance there. Okay? So this is 3.8 meters along here, and so is all of this. But this section here is 1.48. So I can do 3.8 take away 1.48. Now you do have a calculator to use for this question. And so the two blue bits add up to 2.32 meters, but that's this section, this blue section, and this one. So these two are equal sizes because the bookshelf is in the center of the wall. So now I do 2.32 divided by 2, and I get, now remember you have a calculator for this, it's 1.16 meters. So the answer here is 1.16 meters. Now for question 14, it says, a company selected 40% of its staff to be retrained in either management or computing, and 2/3 of those selected were retrained in management and the rest in computing. And it asks for what fraction of the total staff was retrained in computing. So we have 40% of the staff retrained in management or computing. Now 40% is the same as 40 over 100. Now we can simplify that by crossing off the zeros on the numerator and the denominator. You can only do that if there's no decimal point, so that's 4/10 or 2/5, simplifying that fraction. Because you can divide 40 and 100 both by 10, and you can divide the 4 and the 10 both by 2 because they're even. So 40% is the same as 2/5. Now, it says 2/3 of those selected. So 2/5 were selected, were retrained in management, and the rest in computing. So if there's 2/3 in management, then the rest would be 1/3 in computing, because 2/3 plus 1/3 makes up 1 whole. So 1/3 of the 2/5, it's not 1/3 of the total. So the fraction that are retrained in computing is 1/3 of those selected. Now how many were selected? 2/5 were selected. So 1/3 of 2/5 were retrained in computing. Okay, which is 2, multiply the numerators, 1 times 2 is 2, and 3 times 5 is 15. So it's 2/15, the first option. Okay, and that's a bit of a tricky one. Okay, now question 15, this one's a bit tricky as well. So Kevin would like to make some juggling balls for his class of 25 students, and the balls are made from balloons filled with rice. Each juggling ball requires 3 balloons, and each student needs 3 juggling balls. And there are 25 balloons in one packet. How many packets does he need? Now, each juggling ball needs 3 balloons, and each student needs 3 juggling balls. So let's just see what each student needs. So one student has 3 balloons and requires 3 balloons, and each student needs 3 juggling balls. So each juggling ball is 3 balloons, and we need 3 juggling balls. So 3 times 3, one student needs 9 balloons. Okay, that's what one student needs, 9 balloons. But Kevin would like to make juggling balls for 25 students. So 25 students, the number of balloons, will be 9 times 25. At my multiplying, so 9 times 5 is 45. 9 times 2 is 18, plus 4 is 225. The other way you could do that is if you did 10 times 25, that's 250 balloons, but I only want 9 times 25, so I could then subtract 25 and get 225 balloons. Now, so I need 225 balloons. So there are 25 balloons in a packet. So one packet is 25 balloons. Well, 2 packets would be 50 balloons, right? I still need more. Why don't we see what 4 packets is? 4 packets would be 100 balloons. We're getting there. We need 225 balloons. So wouldn't I buy another 4 packets as well? So another 4 packets would make a total of 8 packets, would be 200 balloons. And I know that 1 packet is 25, so I need 8 plus 1 more packet. So 9 packets. So 9 packets would be that 200, and this would be 225 balloons. So I need 9 packets. Okay.